Good morning from Adswood. It's the 8th of July and I thought I would take you quickly around the garden to see some of the clematis in flower. There are over 50 at the moment. Some are just going back, some are in their prime, and some are just coming out. We'll start at the front where we have Forever Friends. This has been in flower for a month and has been sitting on top of this rose, but that's the last bloom for this year. Towards the back you can possibly just see Ao2 Rower, which is Maori for land of the long white cloud. There are some odd flowers from the spring ones still out. That's a bud on Blue Dancer. There are two clematis here. One's just finished flowering, but the second one, Giacomini Superba, is just starting to come out and will flower right up over the caravan fence, and there are more buds here, so that will provide flower for the next month as well. Again, one or two spring ones that are still out. Broughton Bride, Pink Flamingo, I'll stand back from this one so you can see it better. This is Little Nell. It's a very small flower, very delicate, but since we walk past this and can get up close and personal, I think it's a good place. Catherine Chapman, again another small one, and there's some more of Little Nell up there. Chatsworth. All these are viticellas that I'm showing you now. And Minuet. And just appearing, and I hadn't noticed until this morning, is Bluebell. Now, Bluebell didn't flower at all last year, so it was obviously bedding itself in. Around the corner here we have lots of buds from Carol Klein. She's sharing this bed with a Montana. Very nice. At the other side of the entrance to the driveway, we've got Giacomini Pureir. This takes over again from a spring flowering clematis, and between Pureir and Giacomini Superba, when it produces more flowers, this will be quite a stunning entrance. Those of you who have looked at my videos before will know that I grow a lot of my clematis through shrubs and through roses, and here's a good example, both down there and up here, although there's quite a clash of colours. This is Clementes Rubra. It has a lot more flower to come out, but that will be out for the next 6 weeks. As you come around the back of the house, and for some reason this has decided to flower facing the back of the long border rather than the front, this is tie-dye. It has a lot of flower and has been in flower for a long time. Like many of the alpinas, macropatellas and the other spring flowering clematis, they do tend to have a second flush later in the year, and this is the second flush of spiky. It's coming to the end of the second flush now, so the flowers are not quite as vigorous as they were, but it makes a welcome addition. Now, this is a clematis that I've had for many years. It never grows any taller than just over a foot. It's called Hanajima, and I think it's quite beautiful. It's a real pagoda shaped flower. It doesn't have a long flowering period, but it's so delicate. You can see some of the blooms have finished, and I haven't deadheaded this. I should have done, but as we go around the garden you'll probably notice a number of indiscretions that need sorting out. The dominant clematis here is Odoriba. It's a Viorna and it's very prolific. Like many of the plants in the garden, it has a lot of black fly this year, which you can see on the stems. I don't use any herbicides or any sprays in the garden. I rely on my friends the birds to sort this out, and the ladybirds, so I hope they're going to do that. And as you see from this side, it produces a very nice display of flower. Now that's where I showed you tie-dye, and coming down this side is Blue Angel. It climbs through that rose, and next to it is an obelisk with another rose and two other clematis. I'll show you the white on that and the green. This is quite common with dark eyes. It's to do with the cold, I'm told, when it's in bud, but the later flowers don't have that problem. And in the middle you'll see there's a different clematis, and that's Gerandii. Makes a nice combination, I think. Moving down the border, there's a clematis here which has yet to come into flower, and there's one just finishing off. This is it's not a clematis, it's a honeysuckle called Sensation, and for the last couple of years it's been really nice, but this year the flowers have been disappointing and have withered as they've come out. So I'll investigate that. I might dig it up if it's not going to perform. Over the back of the border, and this is a Michaelmas daisy which is far too tall and stopping you seeing what's at the back. But that's Parmiat Serdsa. I'll go around the back later on and try and get a clearer picture of it. That obelisk has killiefreth on it, that's yet to come out. And this is Rujuki. Next to everybody's favourite, I think, Arabella. That's been in flower for a long time, and if I keep deadheading it will be in flower for a lot longer. One of the larger clematis here, as you will see, is Ariostoman, and I think it's New Hendersonii, but some people may argue that it's not. On the archway here the climbing roses have finished, but coming to the fore is Lavender to Earl. It's a beautiful colour, and I think it contrasts with that light green really well. Go through the arch, and on the other side you get a better view of the Ariostoman. And on the wall of the pavilion vitivesta. Now usually at this time of year Harlow Carr is in full flower, but Harlow Carr has struggled this year. I had to cut it right back to the ground virtually, and it has regrown really well, but it just means it will flower later, and you can see the flower buds there. Again, it's a long flower, but how long it'll flower if it comes out so late in the season, I don't know. And turning around to the snakebark maple, we've got Princess Kate. I prefer this to Princess Diana. It's a very long lasting flower, and I just think it's really pretty. This is our hot border, but we're not slaves to only having hot colours. I had to replace the fence at the back this year because it had a montana growing on it right along the length of it, and unfortunately the montana died and the fence was in fairly dire state, so I was persuaded to put a new fence there. And I wasn't quite sure what was going to come up at the back, but we have another Carol Klein, and I hadn't realised just how much growth Caillou puts on. Now Caillou is another Viorna, it's a very small Viorna flower. And when the montana was here at this time of year, these flowers would just appear. Because of the growth of the montana, I wasn't quite sure how vigorous this Caillou was going to be, but it takes up the whole fence. Here's Corrine, one of Raymond Edison's best ones, I think. Corrine has been in this pot for a number of years now. Maybe we'll need repotting at the end of this year. But she's been in flower for quite a while. And moving around, the President is having a second flush. And this is Charlie Brown, one of Mike Brown's creations. I think that's a lovely flower. Next to it in a pot, Diana's Delight. And this is a Texensis, which I'm just experimenting with this structure it's growing on to see if I can grow it round. It depends how much flower it gets. It's a two-tone flower. And this was new to me at the beginning of the year. And this is Prince William. Oh, there's a better flower there. Let me show you that one. If I take you around the back of, well, where I keep the, oh, here's Princess Diana. I've not put her on display. She only has 2 flowers and I want to grow her on a bit more. But this is one of the best clematis I have in the garden at the moment. It was superb last year and is again this year. And this is Prince George. Huge number of buds still to come out. A beautifully clean flower. Worth seeking out for your garden, I think. And this is where we had an Acer. I know we've got another Acer here, but this was quite small. It's now flourished since the large one had to be cut down. And I've remodeled this part of the garden, and this is a mistake. Let me show you. Clementes Rosalind. Now it's a nice clematis, but it's in the wrong place. I can hardly see it from the path because the flowers are dark and they're quite small. So I think I will move this for next year. It does have buds still to come out, but it has some leaves that don't look very happy at all. I don't think that's mechanical damage. I don't know whether it's just a feature of this particular clematis or whether it's been distressed because it hasn't had enough water being in its first year. I'll investigate that. What I might do is to put it in a pot for next year and grow the root ball on. You really are at the business end of the garden now, but there is a clematis growing here which is lovely. This is Wesley. It's one that Raymond Edison grew for one of the anniversaries of the Royal Horticultural Society, and I bought it at the same time as I bought Harlow Carr that I showed you a few minutes ago. This I didn't think was going to grow at all this year. It took ages to show above the ground. Cut it really hard back and it benefits from that and being fed. Again, lots of buds, nice flower, and it seems to be very happy here in the semi-shade. Earlier in the year I bought 3 Raymond Edison miniature clematis, and I've put them all in the one pot. They're just settling in, they're not doing anything spectacular. You can see some of the flowers, but I'll put them on display next year. I'll put them with a proper wigwam with canes and obelisk to grow up. Past the summer house, and there are a number of clematis to come out here. Some buds. Now we've had a new fence put here and many of the clematis got disturbed, so I'm just interested to see what actually grows and what didn't make it with all the disturbance. So I can't tell you what that's going to be, but I can tell you what this one is. This is Prince Charles. Incredibly reliable, long flowering period, comes up every year, not fussy, doesn't disappoint. Now this is the other side border of the house. There are 1 or 2 clematis here. There's an Étoile Violette that I've planted on the new fence, and this Triffid, it's the only way I can describe it, is a clematis that was given to me. I think it's a Heraclofolia, but I'm not overly sure, and that's its name, Giuiniana. It produces very small flowers at the end of the stems. It's probably in the wrong place because it's going to be so tall when it flowers I won't be able to see it, so it probably needs to be grown along something rather than up it. So I will have to replant that next year. As we go through the arch here in the colonnade, look at that. That's morning heaven. Hundreds of blooms, more buds to come. This one is so vigorous it gets pruned twice in the year. First in spring when I prune the others, but also at the time of Chelsea I cut either all of it back or most of it back so that I get a succession of flowers. If I didn't do that, it would be even taller and it gives me more flower. Pruning always provides you with more flower. At the bottom end of the rose and clematis border we have Betty Corning, who is just starting to come out. She has a perfume, not a strong one, but if you get close to it you can smell it. A really nice shaped clematis, I think. Only 3 blooms on it so far, but more to come. And here, growing on top of the roses and sprawling between them, is Little Bass. It comes out at this time of year after the roses are just finishing off, so it prolongs the palette of colour. It's one of the larger Viticella flowers. And is a typical nodding Viticella shape. And next to it is my angel. Now my angel scrambles over plants as well. It produces root runners, so it travels great distances in the garden and comes up where you least expect it. There's another version of dark eyes growing in a pot, and another Étoile Violette. It's slightly different to the other Étoile Violette that I showed you, but I think that's just because it's in a different location. There are so many late flowering clematis that look similar, and I find it difficult to differentiate sometimes. This isn't a clematis, but I must show you, this is Bonica. Now Bonica, if you want value for money in terms of flower per square inch, get yourself one of these. It flowers all summer and produces bloom after bloom. Tremendous. On the lower border here, which is mainly blues, purples and whites, we also have some clematis growing on the metal fence with roses. And this one is again Étoile Violette. And next to Étoile Violette is Madame Julia Corrivon. And following on from Madame Julia Corrivon, Sweet Summer Love will come out and provide colour right through until September. This is an amazing Sanguisulba, purple squirrel. It really does look like a squirrel's tail, although the colour is not the same. And this is Alinushka. It's growing in a pot, but I will find somewhere in the ground for it next year because it's fairly rampant, and when it comes into flower it will provide a tremendous display. Last but not least, I'll show you the pots on the patio. As you may know, I grow these in plastic pots and put them in an outer ceramic pot because it looks nice in the plastic one. But if I grew them in a ceramic one, I'd have difficulty moving them, and this means that I can change plants in the pot much more easily without breaking my back. This has been in flower for quite a while. This is Warsaw Nike. Normally you would see this growing up a fence, but I find it does lend itself to growing up an obelisk, and I could actually tie that back down if I wanted to provide a more dense carpet of flowers. This is another Raymond Edison one called Bijou. I think it's been in flower for 3 weeks now. Does have some more buds and again needs deadheading. I must get out in the garden today and do that. What about this for a clematis? This is called Sunnyside. I bought it last year because I thought it was very unusual, with the white creamy flowers and also almost black centre to the anthers. Now this I'm growing round a cane. I'm growing it as a hoop, and it's gone round and up along the bottom and up the other side, and that has provided a greater intensity of flowers. I think that's a beautiful clematis, ideal for the patio. Again, it's in a pot within a pot, so when it finishes flowering, I can move it and put something else in its place. And this is Darcy, new this year, yet another one of Raymond Edison's. Now I'll show you this. I might as well show you some of the failures as well as successes. This is Samaritan Joe. Now I think Samaritan Joe has been in this pot for too long. She produced a lot of flower that went over very quickly, and as you see, as a plant it's not very happy. It really does look tired out, so I suspect it wasn't getting the nutrient that it needs. So this will be cut right down, and during the winter I will take it out of its pot. This isn't in a plastic pot because it's not right outside the window, so it didn't seem to matter, but I might put it in a plastic pot, do some root pruning perhaps, and put it in fresh compost, see what it's like next year. I hope you enjoyed looking around the garden in early July. It's a good job that I made the video in the morning, because that afternoon we had what I can only describe as something akin to a typhoon. Thunder, lightning, hail, high winds. It pretty much devastated the garden, and of course the clematis didn't like it at all. So you probably saw the garden at its best in early July. It would look quite different if I filmed it today. Anyway, see you soon.